Hello and welcome back to the Sports Booth YouTube channel. My name is Luke and today we've got a very special video. What I wanted to do was really a bit of a deep dive into the mighty Warriors and see kind of how they've got to the position they're in at the moment. Floundering yet again down the bottom of the table, and I understand we've come from a pandemic and they've had a hard couple of years, but I felt something wasn't quite right within the Warriors system and with how the Warriors are built. And we've heard it for so many years, you know, this is our year. So like any good Warriors supporter, I put on a jersey that's a bit too small for me because, you know, we all think we're smaller than we are in the Warriors world. And I went to work. And I'm a numbers man, and I thought I have to let's look back into the story of the Warriors and see especially how we peaked and I guess how we came down from those peaks. So our obvious two peaks are 2002 and 2011. 2002 minor premiers, lose to the Roosters in the grand final. And then 2011 where the Warriors came from 6th to make the grand final and be beaten by Manly. So I kind of wanted to go, okay, what happened in those 2 years? And then what's changed now? Or what are we seeing that's different? And I wanted to kind of get an idea what's going on within the Warriors. Now, there's many ways to look at this. You can look at ownership, you can look at recruitment, but I've decided to focus on two key areas, which is coaching and then the players. Now, one thing that's always stuck with me about rugby league, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm probably not the most qualified rugby league person in the world. The amount of rugby league games I've played is about 5, dating back to my college life when they introduced it in our college for a sweet few years and then it disappeared. So I am a rugby union player, but what stuck with me was actually a pretty famous coach, and I don't know if he's a good coach or a bad coach, but he sits in about the middle, and it's Ricky Stewart, and he said something that stuck with me for the past 5 years, I'd say pretty easily. And this occurred in 2017, and what he said was basically, we need more rep players. This was when he was coaching the Canberra Raiders, and it kind of stuck with me. Like, he goes on to kind of say, like, all the coaches that were at the time were complaining about losing their rep players during the Origin period, but then made the statement that most of those teams who are losing 5 to 6 guys are going on to win premierships, and he knows what he would much rather have. So it kind of struck a line with me was, well, rep players are I guess not the be all end all, but they help win a premiership, as we can see from last year and this year going through. You know, the Panthers quite clearly on top with 6, 7-ish guys in that Origin setup. So I kind of go, okay, that stuck with me, and I want to look into how that's affect the Warriors, especially from a rep perspective that they've got, you know, the only team in the country. How does that affect them? I then also wanted to kind of see how that happened and how that changed over time. My hypothesis is we don't have many rep players at the moment. Now, we can look at the current rep schedule and see that not a single Warriors player was selected in any of those teams. So I go Queensland, New South Wales, New Zealand. I've even can chuck in Tonga or Australia. Not a single Warriors player played in that rep round. So it's quite an alarming. We're the only team in this country. So realistically, we should have at least one player in the Kiwis, and to have none made me think, okay, something's got to go, has been going amiss recently, and I need to dig deeper into it. So good old me opened up my spreadsheets, started getting to work. Now I said, you know what, I don't think this is very fair just to compare, you know, how the Warriors look. I have to compare it to a team. So I started pulling out the Storm data because I knew they started around a similar time to them. And then I quickly thought, that's not quite fair either. So actually a team that started the exact same year as them, the Cowboys, was a good team to kind of compare against. I could go through and I could find these players and find every player and see the impact that was being had. So let's start with the first graph. Let's look into the players side of it. Now what I did was I, again, used Wikipedia, the best source I have, to get a list of every single player that has played for the Warriors, the Cowboys, and the Storm. I then managed with this list to pull the appearances. Now, I don't know if this is 100% up to date, but it would be pretty close. What we found, Warriors, 272 players, 68 of those with rep experience, meaning 25% of players who have played for the Warriors have rep experience. Then when we go into total appearances, it's 11,381. 6,238 of those total appearances are players who have played rep rugby. Now, how I worked this out was anyone who had played at least 20 games for their club, so the Warriors, Cowboys or Storm, and then had at least played 5 games of rep rugby, I considered a rep appearance. Because what I kind of wanted to say was, rather than just making a rep appearance and, having one game at that level because of an injury, I wanted to select someone who was at that level, considered a rep player at a high level for multiple years, or at least one decent year throughout all of Warriors appearances. They have 55% of players who have played a game that is rep rugby or 5 games of rep rugby. We then go into comparing this. Now, starting with the Storm, I noticed obviously started about 3 years later, I think it was 98, 223 players, 48 rep experience, and 22% now makes up of that rep experience. 10,904 appearances, 6,433 rep appearances, and then 59%. When we look at the Cowboys numbers, it gets quite fascinating. So 305 players, so they've used more players. Only 30 of those players had rep experience, and then 10% obviously makes up. Total appearances was 10816. Total rep appearances was 3456 to make it 32%. So my first consensus was, okay, we obviously don't have a rep issue in general. We've got enough rep players. Yes, the talent pool may be slightly less because of the Kiwis versus Australia over the history of time. The Aussies have had it over us Kiwis. We can admit that, I think, in rugby league. But it still doesn't mean that we don't have quite a lot of talent playing for the Warriors. So then what I thought was, let's dig a bit deeper into specific seasons. And what I thought was the best seasons to look at were the seasons where all teams performed really well. 2002 for the Warriors, 1999 for the Storm, and 2005 for the Cowboys. All of those seasons ended up, well, 2 of those seasons, should I say, ended up in runner-up medals for the Warriors and the Cowboys. And 1999, the Storm win their first title. What I wanted to now look at was that squad and those squads in those teams. When I looked at it, second graph's going to pop up now. What we see is the Warriors used 28 players during that season. 15 had rep experience. 54% of that now had rep experience. And then their finals team, so their team that played in the final, 17, obviously you name, 12 had finals experience to make 71% of the team with finals experience. In this graph, it's just any player that's played finals rep experience gets put into a rep experience position. So yeah, if you've played rep rugby before, even one game, I'm considering you at that level. Again, I took circumstantial evidence into play. So if someone had played rep rugby 10 years ago and then they were playing for a final, I probably didn't count it because I want to know if you're at that quality at that time. We look at the Cowboys season and 35 players used 12 rep experience for 34%, 17, 8, 47%. And then finally for the Storm, 29, 11 to make 38%, and then 17, 8 to make 47%. So yeah, again, nothing here stands out more than saying that the Warriors had more rep experience in their team. Now, again, a lot of them in New Zealand, but there was nothing was backing up my data to say that the Warriors should be, under any problems because of this, or, should have any issues because they can't select rep players. Realistically, they should be better off from Ricky Stewart's statement than the other teams because they've got more rep players. Let's move on to the later years. So the Warriors' second golden year, which was 2011, where they just missed out, should I say silver, and then the 2015 season where the Cowboys beat the Broncos in the final, and the 2012 Storm winning season. I thought I'd take a season where they didn't breach the salary cap, but yes. So we look here and we go 30 players used for the Warriors, 15 rep experience, 50% of the team had rep experience. In the final, 17 players selected, 14 to make 82. We compare this to, again, the other two teams. The Cowboys 34, 9, 26, 17, 9, 53, and then the Storm 26, 13, 50, 17, 11, 65%. So again, nothing there. You look at the Storm and the Warriors 2011 versus 2012 season, and you can go very similar. The next slide was where I found it. My money has been made. My hypothesis is heading in the correct direction. 2022 season, so obviously hasn't finished, but up until round 19, I pulled the squads for all the teams and the players that they had used. Warriors, 29 players, 5 with rep experience, 17%. Now, I pulled this last week when I was doing all the stats, so round 19 team, there was 17 players, obviously. 4 of them, and I've got a star there because it did so realistically that number could be 1 and we could be sitting at 6% of our team playing rep rugby. When we look at the other teams, North Queensland Cowboys this year, 30-11-37, 17-10, 59, and so Storm 29-10, 34%, 17-7, 41%. So what we are seeing is if you have rep players, you're probably going to be up higher in the table. And we've seen it 2002, 2011 for the Warriors when they had a team full of rep players, or at least half of rep players, they were up in the right end of the table. We now look at now and go, we're not at the right end of the table. And this takes me on to my next point. And a lovely, confusing, probably looking graph will now probably appear up on the screen. Okay, so I thought, well, what happened from 2012 to get to 2022? What could have possibly happened? Well, this is what happened. In 2012, we finished 14th. 28 players used, 12 rep experience, 43%. 2013, 28 players used, 11 rep experience, 39%. 2014, 30 players used, 11 rep experience, 37%. And I can keep going, but we can basically go year by year. It went 43%, 39%, 37, 38, 52, 52, 53, 23, 16, 18%. So the fact is, we are not selecting rep players. Now, as you can see, the past 4 years, we haven't even had double digits of players who have had rep experience. And this is the rep experience where they've played at least 20 games for the Warriors and they've got over 5 games of rep experience. So we can see why the Warriors are continuously finishing near the end of the table. And we can see from this graph the fact that the Warriors are better when they have had 50% above. And we can see the only time we made finals, and we made it as 8th in the last 10 years, was 2018, and we're still only at that 33% mark. We haven't had a season since 2012 where we've had over 50%. And that is damning for me. And I look at it and I go, as much as Ricky Stewart spoke about it, it should be easier for the Warriors. It should be easier than Canberra having to discuss it, because what we are picking from is the talent pool of New Zealand. And yet we are unable to pick a player who plays for New Zealand in the mid-year tests because we are unable to either A, develop that talent, or B, select that talent because they've been offered a contract elsewhere. Now, whose fault do I think this is? That's a big question, because someone has to be held at fault. For the past 3-4 years now, we could talk about Mr. O'Sullivan, who was our recruiting manager up until he decided to depart for the Dolphins. We could talk about Cameron George, the CEO. We could talk about a whole lot of people who fronted the media and have said it that at multiple times that we haven't been good enough over the past few years. So my issue is now is where to next. But, this video was started with an idea of looking into the Warriors and going, once we were Warriors and once we were great, and I had to do kind of all the looking back and go, were we that great? And were we that incredible? Now we can see what we've shown in 2002 and 2012, and we've had good runs, but I thought I have to at least go back to the history and go, how we started, and I read through all that, and I was like, you know what? Let's table this out. So one more table for you. The 1995 season, the first season, 10th out of 20. Now, I don't think you could describe the Warriors more without this first season. So the Warriors at times were spectacular, at times were not so good. Even going as far as many people saying, it was easily observed if the Warriors weren't winning by 20, they were losing by 20, which, to be fair for the Warriors, has been a clear point of issues over the many years that I've watched them, at least. 1996, then 11th out of 20th, our second season. 97's a bit hard. I've put an asterisk in Super League there because that was the Super League split. And to be completely honest, I'm not 100% around all the points of the Super League, so we'll just leave that as they finished 7th out of 10th. And it wasn't good enough yet again. 98, all the Super League kind of disbanded and all came as a reformed competition to get 20 teams, and we finished 15th. So again, first 4 years, we haven't finished anywhere bar the lower half of the league, and it hasn't been so smooth sailing. In 1999, but again, a disappointing year for the Warriors to finish 11th out of 17. 2000, not a good year. A financial collapse. First year that we started to see them rebranded as the New Zealand Warriors instead of the Auckland Warriors, as they had been up to that point, and really start to play on that base of a New Zealand team. Now, 13th out of 14 is obviously not a good result either, but things were looking finally up. They got, again, another new owner after a lot of financial pressure came in Eric Watson. 2001, the first time we make finals, 8th out of 14. Still in the bottom half of the league, but we make finals. Then the golden year, 2002, Stacey Jones in full flight. We win the minor premiership and we head to the grand final. But as we can see from 2002, we've got a renewed kind of belief that this can be our year, we can do this. 6 out of 15 in 2003. So we can show we can make finals. We're in the top half of the league this time, yet again. And then 2004 happens, where you could probably describe it as the worst ever year for the Warriors. 14th out of 15, narrowly avoid the wooden spoon. But from where we had come 2 years ago to where we were now, a very, very disappointing season. 2005, improvements, but still, again, not making final. What does happen in 2005 is Evan Cleary is named as head coach. So, as we all know now who Cleary is, we could see some promise, I think, from that 2005 year. And then going into 2006, things were looking up until the Warriors have salary cap issues. 2006, we have salary cap issues where we get fined $430,000 and docked 4 competition points. But all faith is restored in 2007 as we return to the finals, finishing 4th out of 16. 2008, again, a slow start to the season, but we managed to get into the finals in the second half of the season with a good streak of wins. 2008 can also be remembered as the year that the first team in the finals lost to the eighth team in the finals, as the Storm lost to the Warriors, with Michael Witt scoring a famous try with 2 minutes remaining to seal a win. 2009, we're going to skip over pretty quickly because it was Ivan's worst year as we finished 14th of 16. But let's get back into the finals. In 2010, 5th of 16, we make it to the finals. Then our second golden era and our grand final second time around, 2011. 6 out of 16th we finished, but unfortunately we went down to the Manly Sea Eagles in the final. I don't know if many will remember, but that was actually the year that the Warriors made the title, the New South Wales Cup team made the final, and the under-20s team made the final. So it was a very successful year, 2011, for the club. Unfortunately, Ivan Cleary leaves and the club falls into a bit of disarray. And this is the last 10 years, what I've just shown you. But going 14th for 16th, 11th for 16th, 9th for 16th, 13th for 16th, 10th, 13th, 8th in the one finals appearance, 13th, 10th, and 12th. And it just really hasn't got much better again this year as we're staring down the barrel of 14. But alas, we look into now the coaching side of things. So the coaching side's a really interesting one because the Warriors have tried and they've tried and they've tried and have yet to succeed. And this was when I early on found out that comparing to the Storm's probably not a good example. So the Cowboys were brought in. Basically, the Warriors have had 14 coaches, coached 631 games to 283 wins for 45%. The 2 years that they made finals and were most successful, 2002 and 2012, the 2 coaches of their best eras sat at 55%, Daniel Anderson, so that was his total coaching record, and Ivan Cleary sat at 50%. So, again, above that 1% that the club has held, but not incredible win percentages. Then we look at the Cowboys where they go 10 coaches, 686 game, 290 wins, 42% win percentage, so less than the Warriors. And their 2 coaches, their records, so Graham Murray, 49% over his coaching career for the Cowboys, and Paul Green, 47%. So again, it seems like if you're above the win percentage of what your club is doing, you're in the right direction. The Storm. So now look at the Storm. You've got 3 coaches, 653, 435 wins to 67%. They're 2 premiership wins that I compared with 1999 with Chris Anderson, who sat at 60% for his record, and Craig Bellamy, obviously we know 70%. Yeah. So what I really realised was okay, the Warriors, what they are lacking at the moment is a coach who can get them to a win percentage above 45% and national or recognized players. The two things that they are missing that they had in 2012 or 2011 and 2002 were rep experienced players and coaches who were capable of taking these teams to win. So really, from my hypothesis, it was correct from what Ricky Stewart is saying and said. It works for the Warriors. The Warriors need rep experience level players. So looking at all this data and everything like that has really opened my eyes to it's bigger than the individual, or it's bigger than Nathan Brown, it's bigger than Matt Lodge. This is a systemic, I guess, issue over the past 10 years. Now, how do we turn this around? Well, if you want to hear from me of how I think the Warriors can turn this around, hit the like button, subscribe, comment on this video. Let me know you want to hear my opinions on how they turn it around, because I would love to share with you what I found out and what I can see happening. But for now, this has been the Sports Booth YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening and looking into the stats with me about what the Warriors once were. Cheers.